easier for.
Cool. Well, so today we're going to be making a country loaf, peasant loaf, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be just sort of a simple, classic sourdough bread, and it's going to be full of flavor, and it's going to be awesome. And it's going to be pretty simple to make, I think, overall. It's not a whole lot of steps. So first thing you need is a mixing bowl of some sort. We're going to be mixing up stuff. And this recipe that I'm following is mostly from the Tartine bread book, which I have stolen Lizzie's copy of that. So I found a version of it online, so I sent that out to everyone. But it's just, yeah, it's pretty classic. Tartine is a famous bakery out of San Francisco that really put sourdough on the map, I think, recently. But the first thing you need for this is you're going to need 500 grams of flour. I'm using a mixture of bread flour and rye flour, but feel free to just go all-purpose all the way, or mix in whole wheat or whatever. If you're gonna just use one type of flour, like an all-purpose or bread flour, 500 grams goes in the bowl. I get mine measured out already.
Is anybody using something besides all-purpose flour? I think I see Liz. Oh, yeah. So Lucy, you got bread flour, maybe, Lucy?
I have like half all-purpose flour and then half the whole wheat blend from Elmendorf that I got this week that I'm like a huge fan of. So I think it's just like basic whole wheat.
Yeah, so if you're doing a blend, I would recommend, what they recommend is 450 grams of your bread flour or all-purpose flour, and then 50 grams of your wheat flour. And, so it's whatever that comes out to, 10% wheat. So it's not going to be a lot. It's not going to be a big, robust wheat bread, but it's going to be enough to give it the flavor. And also, the thing with the wheat is that it's going to have, since it's a whole grain, it's going to have some extra nutrients and stuff in it that will probably boost the activity of your starter.
How many grams of each?
450 of all-purpose or bread and 50 of whole wheat.
Oh, 50. Okay.
Yeah. All right, give everybody a second to get that measured out. Because
here, you do the talk. If you do the talking, it's still not. Yeah, no. I guess keep it on the gallery view. I just think for the recording, it might be nicer to have yours bigger.
Hey, David, I have a question if you don't mind.
Yeah. What's that?
So, what exactly is the leaven versus like the sourdough starter? I've only seen leaven referenced a couple of times in recipes, whereas I've always seen starter referenced. Is there a distinct difference?
Not really. Leaven is just big starter. That's kind of yeah. There's a little more nuance to that. I can go into it while we're mixing this. So with that in mind, I've got the next step we're going to need is going to be, what's that right down here, 350 grams of water. So I've got 350 grams of water. Mine's at about like 80, 82 degrees right now. So we had talked before, for some of the new people, we talked before about how temperature is important. If you use cold water, it's going to take us a long time to rise. If you use really hot water, well, you might kill it, but if you're going like 120 degrees. But if you use warm water, that's going to be good to give it some nice activation and keep it going.
If you don't have a thermometer, it should just feel like a really pleasant swimming pool would feel like. Yeah. It's not like the cold ocean or like a hot tub. It's just 80
David, if our apartment's kind of cold, should we use warmer? I measured out like low 90s. Is that too warm?
That's not too warm at all. That's totally fine. And yeah, sure. It's a cold day today, so you can feel free to go a little warmer than this. The only reason that I'm kind of, I'm trying to get mine in like the low 80s is because we have kind of a schedule today. It's like I think we're going to shape this thing at like 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock or something. So I just want to make sure I kind of have everything ready around then. But like, if you're doing this on your own time or whatever, you can use colder water. Just know it's going to take longer. Warm water, it'll be faster. So that's all.
Yeah, I cool it down a little so I'm on the same schedule.
Yeah, it doesn't matter a whole lot. I think
I can't imagine that your apartment is colder than ours. Every time I've been to your house, it's always quite warm.
It's like
How
65.
much water do we need?
Actually pretty good.
How much water?
What was that question?
How much water?
350 grams.
So we get 500 grams of flour and 350 grams of water.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna grab 11 here. So I want to show you all what this looks like. So let's see. This is what my 11 looks like this morning. I got a few bubbles kind of popping through on the top there. Let's see what happens when I pick it up. So when you pick it up, you can see that there's sort of like a lot of like strands. That's gonna be like the strands of gluten and stuff in there. So you can see it's kind of active. It's been fermenting all night. So that's that. And I'm gonna take 100 grams of that and I'm gonna put it into this mixture. So let's just get that.
Oh God.
It's all right,
It's okay.
everybody. All right. I get this all in my hands now.
All right, so he's got the 11. He's got his bowl on the scale, and it tared it down to 0, and then can measure to get his 100 grams of leaven.
Mm-hmm. So let's see here. So that's going to be a little bit more than I need. I'm not too worried if I'm like a little over. Let's see here. Cool. So I'm just measuring out 100 grams of this. There's probably a smarter way to do this. I neglected to do it. But that's that. All right. Cool. First thing we're going to do is...
Sorry, David, I feel like I'm a little behind.
Yes.
In my bowl is the 500 grams of flour, the 100 grams of 78-degree water, and now we are adding...
500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water. Is that what you did?
I need more water. I'm glad I checked.
Mm-hmm. So just to repeat that, that's going to be 500 grams of flour, 350 of water, and then 100 of your leaven. All right, cool. So then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mix this all up. Now you can use stand mixer if you want. You can use, if you have like a dough hook, a spatula, whatever. I'm going to mix it up with my hands because it's fun. And and this also gives me a chance to like feel the temperature of it, feel that there's no lumps in there. And it's sort of the playtime of this morning. I feel like I'm playing with Play-Doh or something.
Do we add 11 into this when we mix it?
So yes, 500 grams flour, 350 water, and 100 grams of leaven are all going into this. All right, so you had a question?
Oh, that was my same, same question.
Cool. Cool.
I have a question, Dave.
Is there a question in there?
I have a question.
Yes.
So why did we make 200 grams of leaven if we were only going to use 100?
Yeah. So that's a good question. That kind of was going to segue into the next thing I wanted to say, which is like what Josh kind of asked, what is 11? And 11 is the number that comes after 10. But 11 or I'm sorry. 11, or you'll see it written as the French word "levant," is basically it's just more starter. It's just a big starter. I think the "levant" actually means big ass starter in French. I'm not totally sure, but the difference is 11 is usually you use it all. That's the catch. This recipe, I don't know why the way that's written, you end up with more than you need. But in a normal leaven, then it just means it's starter that you use all of it and you put it all in. So that's it. But you see that you'll notice that you made it the same way that you made the starter, which is that you just fed equal parts water and equal parts flour. Any questions about that? So I'm just kind of working this in here, just trying to get all of the flour totally wet. You can just kind of squeeze it through your hands, feel it. You can feel the grains of the flour.
So my mixer is a little thicker, I think, than yours because my hands are a lot dirtier than yours are. Is there any reason for that?
My hands are pretty
Yeah,
dirty
his
here.
hands look pretty equal.
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay.
I just don't think he
So
aren't.
it'll
All right, cool.
yeah, it should like as you get it all fully hydrated and stuff, and then let it rest, you'll see that it kind of relaxes a little bit and it doesn't feel so stiff.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. One other thing I want to point out, which is interesting with this recipe, is that you put in when you made the leaven last night, you put in only a tablespoon of starter, and that's kind of crazy because, like, you know, usually when we've been feeding our starter, we've been doing equal parts starter to flour to water. I don't know. Pop quiz. Anybody know why that might be? Anybody have
Yep. Equal parts?
yeah, why do you think that we only used a tablespoon of starter instead of
Oh, I
using
see. Yeah, I don't know.
grams of starter? Yeah, I don't really know. I think that the reason is that because I think that if we used a lot of starter, I think we used 100 grams of starter in this, it would actually become really sour. That's what I'm thinking there. But it kind of just goes to show how you can kind of play with the ratios to change the outcome of this.
Why is this other house? How do you spell that's the other house?
Almost there. I'm almost got all my flour integrated.
It's sticky, right?
It is really sticky. This is now if you're used to like making like pizza dough or something, or even another type of regular bread, you're gonna notice this is way stickier. And that's by design. This is a high hydration dough. I think we're coming in at like 70% hydration on it. And you know, like a pizza dough or something might be like 30-40%. So that's it. But this makes a good environment for the starter to rise, or for the sourdough to do its thing, and it will make for a very like moist bread as well. Cool. So now I'm going to try the difficult part of getting all this stuff off my hands.
So he's just using a spatula and trying to scrape his hands off. We're gonna lose a bunch that's stuck in your hand there. He's also got his bowl scraper attempting to scrape off stuff stuck in his hands.
Yep. And so maybe it'd be smarter to do this with a dough hook or something. I don't know. This is what like every baking book or bread book suggests doing. And like I said, I think it's really the reason here is just that you can feel all of the dough and you can feel it and make sure that it's fully hydrated. And we've checked the temperature of it and stuff. And I don't know. That's it. I think also, a lot of professional bakers are making this in huge quantities, right? So they might be, a 5-gallon or 10-gallon bucket making this thing. So they need to just get in there and do it. How's everybody's looking?
I think the problem is that most people have probably muted themselves, but now cannot unmute themselves because their hands are covered in goop. So
I'll show you mine, but I'm going to unmute myself again.
There's one fun trick with Zoom that if you kind of can only use your elbows and you want to unmute, you can hold the space bar in and it will mute you temporarily so you can talk. And that's a big target for the elbows.
all right, Dolores, where did you go on here? Your video is off, Dolores, so we can't see it if you were gonna.
Oh, I can't get it back on. My hands are dirty.
Oh, but I see you on this one. It's kind of weird. Yeah, we see you now, Dolores. Oh, there you are.
I'm here?
Yeah. You gotta lift it up to like where your face is. Okay.
Cool.
Doesn't look too sticky.
No.
Did you use your hands, Dolores, or did you use?
It's not as sticky as yours, and I used the Swedish dough hook.
Cool.
Do you want to hold that up so people can see what that looks like?
Oh,
the dough hook.
Oh.
You got turned back off again.
Can you see it?
Your video is turned off right now.
No.
There you go.
All right. Try this.
So it's like a sort of this funny
Can you
whisk.
see it now?
No, it's gone again. But I saw you for a second. There you go. So yeah, it's like a funny whisk that has like these loops of metal on it. Yeah.
What is that called?
Swedish dough hook.
This is ours.
Is it like a hand tool? It's not necessarily like attached to a mixer or something like that?
No, it's a Swedish dough hook, and it's not. It's just like that.
I'll have to look into that. I've been curious about getting a KitchenAid mixer, but I don't really have the space for it. And while I don't mind mixing the dough with my hand, it can be a hassle sometimes. At least kneading can be a really hassle. I'm curious if the dough hook helps with that at all.
Yeah.
I think so. I used it for the focaccia, and it came out really good.
Cool. I'm gonna go rinse my hands for a
How
second.
come I keep losing my video?
This is what ours looks like.
Looks pretty good. Does not look as wet as Dave's, but I think that's okay. You're also a little different with the gluten-free.
Yeah. Which is definitely a lot drier. So should I add a little bit more water to it?
I wouldn't think so, but we'll wait till Dave comes back from the sink to give his opinion. Yeah, that looks good, Mikey. It looks, you're on mute, Mikey, so we can't hear you.
Yeah, it's definitely wet and sticky, but it's together.
Yeah, it looks pretty similar.
Yeah, it looks pretty similar actually. Yeah.
Dave has going on here. It's like not very smooth and kind of wet. It's probably also different for folks, different types of flours, since Dave.
Yeah, I've probably got the same as you. The rye. I've got 50
rye.
50 whole wheat.
Yeah.
This is mine with all-purpose.
This has been going on.
Yeah.
All right.
David, do we need any more of our levain, or can we put it in the sink?
Yeah, so the rest of that 11, you can, I mean, it's just starter at this point now, so you could put it in the fridge. Some of you probably have starter that you put in the fridge yesterday. You could just add this to it if you want. You can use it to make popovers. You can discard it. You can make pancakes, whatever you want to do. That's yours. We don't need it anymore, though. It's done for the day. It's done its work. All right. Well, everybody's finishing up.
Dave, I have a question. Should I put more water in mine?
Let's see. I'm going to just make you bigger here. Why is it not? Let's see. I don't know. That actually looks pretty decent to me. I don't know. It's good. Yeah. There's probably nothing wrong with putting more water in. So if you feel like you need it, you can add a couple tablespoons or something like that. Yeah, but this is not like, this doesn't need to be an exact science. Like, it doesn't matter if you're at, what are we at, like 70% hydration, I said, or if you're at like, 75% or something. It'll change the dough a little bit, but should be fine either way. All right, let's see. Cool. So right now it is 10:30, so I stopped mixing this a few minutes ago. We're gonna just let this rest now. So we didn't put any salt in this, and so that's the only ingredient we haven't mixed in. And the reason is that this is what's called the autolyse phase, or autolyse. I've heard it called both things, and that basically is just a time for the flour to get fully hydrated. So you want all the water and all the starter and all the flour to come together and be one cohesive thing. If you added salt in when you mix this, the salt would have the possibility of drawing the water out of the flour, and it wouldn't be as fully hydrated as it should be. So that's what this phase is all about. So we're just gonna let this rest for, usually we let it rest for like a half an hour. We just let it go like 15, 20 minutes or something while we talk about stuff. All right, has anybody got any other questions while we're waiting on that?
Okay, so I think I might have missed just the last step, but essentially all we did was we mixed the flour, water, and leaven. And then we hand mixed it until it sort of all came together. And then we are covering it with like a tight lid. Or like, can I use cling wrap?
Yeah, you can use whatever you want. So yeah, at this point, just cover it with whatever. It doesn't really matter. We just don't want to dry out. All right, let's see. We've got a message down here.
I think that was from Alex.
Oh, cool. Let's see. Do I have anything else I want to talk about? Yeah.
So we're following slightly a different strategy just because we've made for what we're using this opportunity to really learn your technique, the tartine methods. But I also like we want to make 2 loaves instead of 1, so we're just observing at this point.
Cool. Yeah, you can just double this recipe too. This recipe is actually, well, the original recipe for this makes 2 loaves. I just cut it in half because I only wanted to make 1. And I figured most people here just want to make 1. So feel free to just double up on this for certain. Cool. So that actually brings us to another thing I wanted to mention, which is that I actually messed up on mine already. Last night when I made the leaven, instead of putting 1 tablespoon of starter in, I put 2 tablespoons of starter in. So I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? But when you make when you make a mistake or whatever, I won't even say the word mistake in quotes on this stuff. It's like, don't worry too much about it, because it's not. If you read enough books, it starts to sound like it's this exact science where everything has to be perfect and water temperature has to be exactly 82.4 degrees and you need, this much of that and that much of this. But it's not a huge deal if you use a little bit extra flour, a little extra leaven, or a little extra starter or whatever. Or if you want to double the recipe or have it, it's not usually you shouldn't have too much trouble doing that kind of stuff. And if you make a mistake on one of your measurements, it's either not that hard to fix, or it's something that you can just roll with, So I'm thinking, this is gonna be a little pop quiz for you guys that have been here for 4 weeks. I accidentally put in 2 tablespoons of starter last night instead of 1. What do you guys think? Would you have a hypothesis as to what this is going to do to my bread?
Dave, I made the same mistake sort of semi-intentionally because I felt like my starter was a little weak. So I don't know whether doubling it would improve it, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem like it would make a difference, right? It's the rising agent, maybe a little extra rise, but I wouldn't have thought.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I think that we're going to find out, right? But we'll see what happens here. But my theory is, just like you said, Mikey, is that it might rise a little bit more or a little bit faster. And that's totally fine. Like, especially if I was cooking this on my own schedule, then I could just watch it and then decide when it's doubled in size or whatever, and I want to cook it. That's where we're going to go. If I want to change this, though, just so making sure I'm on the same schedule as everybody else, there is one easy way to change the rate at which your bread rises. I think we talked about this a whole bunch. Who's got an idea on that?
Room temperature, or the ambient temperature.
Yeah.
Totally. Temperature, yeah, exactly. You cool it down, it's going to go slower. Speed it up, it's going to go faster. So knowing that I put in maybe a bit more starter than I had anticipated, I might just put this in a cool part of my house instead of a warm part of my house. So, but it's all about just keeping an eye on it. We're gonna be baking this, or we're gonna be shaping this like 4 hours from now. So just keep an eye on it throughout the day, and if it doesn't look like it's active enough, after a couple hours, maybe warm it up a little. That's what I'm gonna do. My other theory is that it might make the dough a little bit more sour by having more starter in it. So we'll see. That's actually fine with me. I like to have my sourdough sour, so this particular loaf is not going to be super sour. It should have a lot of flavor. A lot of that flavor is going to come from the sourdough, but it's not going to be super duper sour. And I think that's because of the small amount of starter in it. But mine might be more sour, and that's fine with me.
David, I can, so the loaf I just made was on a whim, as it was like practice yesterday, but I used starter from I didn't make a separate levain with less starter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably, the ratio is going to be like way higher, like 5 times higher than what would be in here. So I can bring you some when it cools down. And you can.
Yeah, let's find out.
Have you taken it out of the oven already?
I did. You guys want to see it?
Let's see it.
Wait.
Ooh.
I forgot to put flour on top, but it looks pretty good.
That looks great. Yeah.
Yeah. It looked kind of dark now.
Yeah, I think I burnt it a little.
Yeah.
That look a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these recipes, especially the tartine recipe, they love to like really caramelize the crust and get it super duper dark. So that's kind of a personal preference. We don't make ours that dark, because then it gets like really tough. But
yeah,
it's personal preference. Some people like it, softer or harder or whatever.
Or if the crust is really hard and you don't like it, you can just claw out and eat the insides.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed it came out. I did 20 minutes closed in a Dutch oven and then 30 the lid off. So maybe I needed like 25.
Yeah, we do 20-20 usually. So you left it in for an extra 10 minutes longer than I would. So that's definitely why it's going to be a lot darker. Yeah, just keeping an eye on stuff and decide what you like is the key to that.
I'll let you know.
Did you want to talk about the?
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, that's a good point. So Jenny just brought up about this, how to cook this stuff. So we're a full 24 hours away from throwing this thing in the oven. But I did want to talk about it now while we're not in the middle of like a hot oven or anything. So I'm going to be using a Dutch oven for mine. That's what I recommend. But it's not if you don't have one, it's totally fine. You can make awesome breads without it. Does anybody not have a Dutch oven? Okay, so we got Josh, I think, doesn't have one. All right.
Josh is getting one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a week before I get it.
No, you can borrow my extra one.
True, I could.
I can bike it over.
I might take you up on that. I'm gonna try. I have 2 other loaves being made right now as well. And so I'm gonna try making it without the Dutch oven for the other 2 and see how that works out, and then see what the results are.
Nice, cool. What's your oven setup? Did you do a steam bath in there, or did you just bake them?
I'm going to do what I think is the steam bath. So I looked this up. Apparently, because I don't have the Dutch oven, I can just use a lower rack with like a lidded like cookie sheet of sorts. Throw some ice in there. I also have a pizza stone, and so that's what I'm going to use for the actual bread, or the surface for the bread, and then just have the ice melt in the oven while it cooks.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. That's basically what I was going to suggest. Maybe we'll just do a demonstration of it right here, because we got a few more minutes before it's time to mix this while it's still autolyzing. So if that's cool with everyone, I'll show you how to do this, because this is an important thing to do if you're making something that does not fit in a Dutch oven, such as if you're making like a baguette or something. I'm not going to go into the Dutch oven. So this is an important technique to know anyway. So Jenny's going to videotape me doing this. And it's really, the great thing about this is you can practice this on a cold oven. So I'd recommend doing that so that you're not like, it's go time and you want to get all your bread in there and then you forgot a step or you burn yourself on something. So I'll show you what I do. So what Josh is suggesting is pretty much, is pretty similar to what I do. It's the tamer version. So I'm going to show you. So first thing is you get a pizza stone. This is mine. You can, if you don't have a pizza stone, you could also use like a cookie sheet or something like that. But pizza stones are awesome because of the way they retain heat and the way they emit heat. So put this in the oven in the middle rack. No, I get something in there already. Cast iron. All right. So that's in there in the middle rack. And then this is my broiler tray. So like Josh said, he's got some other sort of metal pan. I just like this because you can put this on high heat and it's got an edge on it so water doesn't pour out of it. But the idea is we need to fill this oven with steam. And professional bakers do this all the time. They have steam injected ovens. None of us have those at home, I don't think. If you do, good for you. I'm coming over and baking. But the way that we can fill our ovens with steam is a little bit more old-fashioned. So you would preheat the oven to like 450, 500. Cool. You preheat the oven to like 450, 500, whatever, so it's super duper hot. And the pizza stone is going to retain a lot of that heat and then re-emit it into whatever you're baking. And then what Josh is suggesting is he's just going to take this thing out and put some ice cubes in there and then close it up. And then when you do that, you put your bread in there. I'm just gonna take like 10 of my loaf of bread, put that in there, close it up, and it's gonna fill with steam as the ice melts. So there's a more dramatic way of doing this, which is what I usually do, and it really fills the oven with steam. And that is to basically take a cup or a couple cups of water and pour it in there while it's really hot, and that will immediately fill the whole thing with steam, and all steam will come pouring out. So I can show you the step-by-step for that. But first of all, does anybody have any questions, or does anybody, can everybody even hear me because I'm standing up here?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I understand the steam bath piece of it, to get the steam in the oven before you put the bread in. But if I don't have a Dutch oven, what do I put the bread on? Just like a cookie tray with a parchment paper or something?
Yeah, definitely. So I would recommend a pizza stone. If you don't have a pizza stone, then just a cookie sheet. Yeah.
I think that Amaris also doesn't have a Dutch oven. And I know she's not baking today, but when she does bake, you'll probably want to do the steam bath option as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a pizza stone either, but I do have a round cookie sheet. So
That'll work totally fine.
Yeah.
So I'll show you what, let me just do a quick step-by-step of this so you can practice this. Feel free to practice at home. I have a pizza peel. Again, don't need one, but it's going to make my life easier. So the way that this works is, I'm going to pretend this is my loaf of bread. So I got my loaf of bread there. I'm going to need a dry towel. Being dry is very important for this. And I'm going to need, let's say, like a cup of water. So I'm going to put a bunch of water in this. And here's how it works. So first thing is going to be, when you do this, just make sure you have all of your stuff here, because you don't want to be running around the kitchen, burning yourself, looking for things, looking for pot holders, stuff like that. So I'm actually going to grab a pot holder as well. So just make sure you have your bread, you've got clean towel, pot holder, and a cup of water. And then how you do this is, so this is going to be all super hot in here. It's going to be 500 degrees. I'm going to take this bottom rack out and just move it out an inch. So if you want to show that. And so that's got my pan on there, broiler tray. This is where I'm going to put my water. So I bump this out a little bit just so I can reach it. I'm going to take my dry towel and place it on the glass of the oven, because there's going to be water involved here. And if water touches that hot glass, it can shatter. So put the dry towel on there just to make sure you don't break anything.
Jenny, can you lower the camera a little bit?
That.
Sorry, maybe I'm looking at the wrong
So,
view.
yeah, so we have two screens going on.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, Jenny's on the back of the camera here, the secondary camera angle in my camera studio here, in my cooking studio. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take, I've got pizza peel with my bread on here. This red thing represents my bread. If you don't have a pizza peel, that's fine. You know, you can figure stuff out and just slide it off somehow, or take this out and put your bread on top of it and put it back in, whatever. So I'm just going to slide that in. It lands there. I'm going to take my glass of water, throw it in onto this pan, and it's going to be like steam's going to come pouring up. It's going to be super loud. And then in one motion, I'm going to take this thing off here, take my the towel off of the glass, and then close the oven. And you see when I closed the oven, it pushed in the tray full of steam. So you want to make sure that you don't pull out too far, so that way you can get pushed back in. And that's it. And then at that point, if you do that all really quickly, so like I just have this out here, and I can do this really fast so I don't lose heat. So put that over there, put my bread in the oven, hit it with some steam, and then close it. Whole thing's done in 5 seconds. So I recommend practicing that on a cold oven, just so you can get that step-by-step ready on how to do that. And that's how I make a steam bath, because it really fills it up a lot with steam. And you want it to have a lot of steam in the beginning, because when that bread gets in there, it's going to first of all, the yeast is going to start going crazy because it's nice and warm. So it's going to be really active, and it's going to start making the bread rise. Second thing that's going to happen is all of the liquid inside of your bread is going to start to steam up. That's going to make the bread rise a lot. So in that first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, your bread is just going to go from like kind of like, you know, medium sized up to like boom, like a big loaf of bread. And so it's important to just keep it, to keep steam in there or to keep it moist in there. So that way the bread has a chance to spring up before the crust forms. That's what that's all about. Anybody got any questions about that demonstration?
You can probably also find on YouTube videos of seeing an actual steam bath, so you can see what it looks like with like the steam coming out and the making it happen.
Yeah,
quickly.
definitely.
I have
And
a question regarding the Dutch oven portion. So if I was using a Dutch oven, should I like oil it up when it's preheating? Is there any like specific like prep to the Dutch oven itself that needs to happen while it's preheating?
no, so Dutch ovens actually keep everything super simple. You just heat it. So you just put it in the oven, preheat it to 500, and then we're gonna just take the bread. So our bread when we make this when we put this in tomorrow is gonna be on parchment paper. So I hope everybody here has some parchment paper. If not, we can figure out something. But you'll put the bread on the parchment paper first, and then just place it in the Dutch oven, so it won't
I
stick.
can make bike deliveries of parchment paper to anyone who doesn't have it.
There you go. You're gonna bike down to Swansea and give one to Eric. He can use it.
Anyone in Boston, Cambridge, or Somerville who needs parchment paper.
So yeah, so the parchment paper is what will prevent it from sticking. You don't need to worry about oil.
Okay. So it doesn't damage the pan at all or anything like that. For some reason I had read somewhere that like if you preheat the Dutch oven, or maybe it's a specific type of Dutch oven, that it can crack or something along those lines.
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, Dutch ovens are meant to be at really high heat, so I don't think that's a problem. Pizza stones, I have had a pizza stone crack on me once at 500 degrees. So if you're going the pizza stone route, maybe go 450, 475 instead of 500, because they do have the possibility of cracking, especially if there's any moisture in them at all. But it's probably, I mean, I also use mine at 500 all the time. I've only had a problem once in 15 years. So.
I used it the other day at 500 and it didn't seem to have a problem. So hopefully it won't today. Or
I'm sure that it won't. I'm sure. Cool. All right.
But so if we do have a Dutch oven, no need for a steam bath, right? Or
yeah, no need. Because
okay, good.
The Dutch oven will keep all the steam in.
Yeah, right. Cool.
Dutch oven, you got the easy way out. You
all right, cool.
Yeah, you don't need to put another tray in there. You don't need to put a pizza stone in there. You just Dutch oven all the way.
Sweet.
The difference between the two, or why you use the two, the Dutch oven, it's not about the actual piece of equipment cooking it. It's that it's something that can be enclosed and keep the steam in, right? So the Dutch oven is just, you can put a cover on and then that keeps all the steam in, and then you can take it off so you don't have it steam in. Whereas if you don't have that, you use the steam bath so that you can get the same effect of having it closed.
That's right.
Okay, interesting. So the Dutch oven generates its own steam essentially because it's nice and enclosed.
It doesn't generate steam. It traps the steam from the bread.
I mean, from the bread. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And yeah, that's it. All right, let's see.
It's been
like 20 minutes. So let's go back to the cooking show here. All right. Cool. So this dough has been resting for 20 minutes. That looks like. And now it's time to just add the salt. So actually, we're going to add the salt, and we're going to add 50 grams of water. So let's grab some, let's see what I write down. Sorry, 25 grams of water. Everybody, 25 grams of water. I'll be right back. I'm going to measure some out.
So 10 grams of salt and 25 grams of water. We specifically are using sea salt, but if you don't have sea salt, you can use whatever regular salt is called, table salt. That's all true, right, David?
That is all true.
Okay, yes. So again, 10 grams of salt, 25 grams of water.
Regular like table salt, if it's not sea salt, if you do 10 grams, it might make it a little extra salty just because, but I don't know. I've just heard that in other stuff before. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I think that different types of salt, maybe like the different shapes, if you're using like kosher salt or something, it's got a really big structure. Maybe there's, well, no, actually here's the thing. Since we're doing it by weight, it actually shouldn't matter what type of salt you're using. Yeah, that's the key thing about using it by
Yeah.
weight, because it's always going to be the same amount of salt no matter what shape that grain is. So you don't have to worry about grains being bigger, grains being smaller.
That makes sense. And it's usually when you're doing like a teaspoon of salt if you have the different.
Totally.
Might be.
Absolutely. That's actually a great call out. Yeah, another good reason to do things by weight. So I've got mine. I'm just gonna take it and kind of sprinkle it over the top of my dough. And then I'm going to take the water that I have measured out here, 25 grams of water, and just kind of pour that over the top. Boom. And now we get back in here. So same thing, actually. I'm going to just try to, mix this up and then also kind of squeeze it through my hands, so that way I can feel the salt dissolving. I don't want like big chunks or lumps of salt to be in at the end of this. So I'm just kind of working this thing for a minute. We'll work this for just like a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. And then just like get in there and just squeeze it, feel what that feels like. You should probably notice how this already feels way different than it did 20 minutes ago. Mine is not nearly as sticky as it was. And it's actually a little bit, it's got more body to it. Like look, I can pick this whole thing up right there like this. So that's the bread already coming together. Yeah, Elsa's got hers picked up too. So,
oh yeah, Mikey, nice.
Yeah.
Elsa, you're using all-purpose flour, no wheat, right? You're just using one type of flour.
I'm using King Arthur's all-purpose.
Okay, because there might be a difference between the combination of wheat and all-purpose versus just an all-purpose flour. Yeah, what we've experienced.
Yeah, totally. Like a bread flour is going to be like stronger than an all-purpose, but I mean, I think both of them are going to come up with a really good product in the end. But to Christian's point, maybe like you can see, I can just pick up my bread like this. Maybe yours won't be able to be quite as strong at this point, but yeah, maybe it will. It's fine. Alice's got hers all in one hand. Yeah.
What do I do about the stuff that's getting like stuck to the bottom?
Yeah, just kind of try to scrape that up if you can. So we're trying to just get this all into one mass. You can also see that my bowl is like kind of got like stuff all stuck to the sides. I'm gonna try to get as much of that off as I can, but like I'm not too worried if some stays on there. And so as I do this, you can feel it, the water and the salt working their way in. So at first it was just like a wet piece of dough, and now it's kind of going back to being one cohesive dough that's feeling more smooth. And as I do this, I can feel to make sure that there's no big grains of salt in here. They seem to all just be getting sucked in, which is good.
David, how much water did you put in?
25 grams.
Yeah, so sprinkling the salt on top and then sort of sprinkling the water on top of that and then mixing it in. 25 grams of water, 10 grams of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Once David forgot to put the salt in the bread, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I want to point out that I have made, like, it sounds like, so I'm standing here like, oh, look at me, I know how to make sourdough bread. I want to point out I made every single mistake in the book on this. I have made bread that did not have any salt in it. It was so bland. I made bread that didn't rise at all. It was like a hockey puck. I've proofed my bread upside down on accident. I put the wrong amounts of stuff in. It generally comes out pretty edible.
Well, maybe not the hockey puck one. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, so if you make a hockey puck, then guess what? You got croutons in your future. You got breadcrumbs in your future. I bet you could make a bread pudding too, and that would be fine.
Yeah.
So
you got street hockey in the future.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that.
Josh and I are on a Slack space with people who are better at sourdough than we are, and they're constantly offering pro tips. But one person is always like, always add salt, always add salt, always add salt.
Yep, totally.
They had some sort of trauma.
Yeah, it's
really traumatized by lack of salt.
It's so easy to forget that stage. You're like, cool, I mixed it all up. Now it's gonna go rise. It's like, no, you've got to come back in 20 minutes and make sure we have that salt. Cool. So mine feels really good and coherent, cohesive. I want to do a few stretch and folds here. Remember how to do that from the focaccia episode. Before I do that, anybody got questions?
I have a kind of a question, Dave. So when I went to go add my salt and water, the top of my dough was pretty dry. And I feel like this always happens. This definitely happened with the focaccia. I made some pizza dough. It definitely happened with that. And I just like, I know that you always have these containers that have nice like fitted lids on them. I don't have any of those containers. Is that just, I'm just not gonna, I'm always gonna have dry topped dough unless I get a container like that? Or is there a way to use either cling wrap or rubber bands or towels or in some way make it so that the top of my dough doesn't always dry out?
Yeah, no, good question. Actually, mine actually felt a little bit dry when I went to mix it up too. I think a little bit of that is inevitable because it's going to be touching some air no matter what. But I would, if I didn't have a nice cover to put on this, I would just put plastic wrap or put that like beeswax wrap stuff on top.
Okay.
And that's, I think that should be fine because the plastic wrap's going to make an airproof seal too.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
You can also, if you get your towel wet and wring it out and then put that on top.
Oh, that is a good idea.
So
Okay.
I do that less, like I might do it now, I might not do it now, but I definitely, that's what I do when I'm proofing, I'm just making my sourdough, like adding starter, I put wet cloth.
Okay, cool. I'll try that. I'm not sure that I'm getting a tight seal on my plastic wrap is why, but I'll try the wet towel and maybe that'll work better.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt if you had rubber bands that could go around the container
Sure.
to put the rubber band around the plastic wrap, right?
Yeah.
And actually, that's a good point for Dan too. I know I was talking to Dan yesterday about top of his sourdough kind of drying out and his starter. I think that the wet towel thing is actually a pretty good idea because that'll make an airproof seal as well. So you can try that. Cool. I'm gonna do some stretch and folds now. So throughout the day, every half hour for 4 half hours. So 2 hours, whatever. I don't even know. You just do some math.
11, 11:30, 12, and 12:30.
What Jen said. You're gonna stretch and fold this thing. And so that means we did this before for the
Does the 11 o'clock one we're doing now count as one of the 4?
No, how about that? We'll do 4 more after this one. Yeah.
So 11, 11:30, 12, 12:30,
1
1 o'clock.
Yeah. And so here's the thing, actually, I do want to say, like, as you do this, each time you do this, you're going to notice that it feels different. It's going to go from like this really rough dough to like really smooth and airy. And so at some point, I think, kind of use your intuition. If you get to that 5th one and it feels like it's totally pillowy and airy and you're afraid that if you fold it, you're going to knock the air out of it, then don't do it. But I'm going to aim for 4 more after this. So give it a try. If you don't want to do that the last one, don't do it. If you need to do an extra one, do it. Totally fine. So the way that we do this is I got some water here, just clean water. I just dip my hand in because otherwise the dough is going to stick to it. And then you grab a little bit of the side of the dough, stretch it out, fold it over. And then I rotate the bowl 90 degrees and do the same thing again. Stretch it out, fold it over, rotate, stretch it out, fold it over, and one last time, I'm gonna grab a chunk of this thing, stretch it out, and fold it over. And so that's one turn. So that's all you have to do at 11:30, 12 o'clock. You're just gonna do that, put the lid back on, let it sit for half an hour. I think right now, in order to maybe develop some more strength in this, I'm just gonna do this a few times. Let's maybe do this like, let's give it like, 4 sets of stretch and fold, so like 15, like stretch and fold 15 times. Walk around the bowl. 15, sure. It doesn't have to be exact on this. It's no big deal.
So is this pattern here, is this essentially the kneading for this dough?
Exactly. So you're going to notice that if you try to put this out onto a counter and knead it like a regular dough or something, you're not.
Did you know if he actually watches the same one too?
Watches what?
So yeah. So instead of kneading this on the counter,
is this for the? Is this to? What's the point of this?
All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
So what's the point of this? Is this for like incorporating the gluten or getting it more elasticy or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. So this is building strength in the dough. So instead of kneading it to build strength, we're going to just fold it over a bunch of times and stretch it. And as you do this, each time you do this, it's going to make the dough a little bit stronger. And that is going to be important to trap the air bubbles that the yeast generates. So when it makes those air bubbles, it's going to make the dough rise. If you don't have strength in there, then the air bubbles will kind of seep out. We want to keep them all trapped in there nice and tight.
So this is kind of pointless for a gluten-free.
I don't know. So I would think that gluten-free flour probably works on the same principle. There's probably some sort of protein or something in there that is binding it. It's just not gluten, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to rise at all. So there's something in there to do it. So I would suggest doing it.
And usually, I don't know anything about gluten-free bread, but I would imagine that you have to, like, this is kneading the bread. This is the equivalent of kneading it. And if you're making a bread, you usually need to knead it. So I would think that even for the gluten-free bread, you would want to.
Yeah.
Anybody has any other opinions?
So I'm actually noticing this is really tight. It's actually really hard for me to stretch it. Every time I stretch it, I have to push down with my other hand. So I'm just gonna stop now. That's done enough. It's developed enough strength. You'll find that every time you play with this dough, every time you stretch it, every time you poke at it or whatever, it tightens up. And so that's why we do this, and then we let it sit for half an hour, and that lets it loosen up again, and then we can fold it and then tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen. That's kind of the flow with that. So for me, this is done. You can see what it looks like. Take a look at it now. Take a look at your own. See what it looks like. It's not too super smooth or anything. A couple hours from now, it's going to be really smooth. So just keep an eye on it.
Where are you keeping it, Dave? Like what sort of temperature? Or does
I'm gonna try to keep mine in like the low to mid 70s. Actually, this is a great question though. So let's this is a good thing to
for sealing it, or
what's that? Oh no, I'm not going to seal it. So before I do that though, I'm going to I'm actually going to take the temperature of this dough because I'm kind of curious as to what it is. So again, just you take a food thermometer. I'll stick that in there and see what we got. So this is coming out at 70.5 degrees, so 70 degrees, which is not very warm at all. So I'm going to need to warm this up. I'm going to try to aim for something in the mid 70s. So for me, what I'll do probably right now is I'll take this, I'll put this cover on it. It's not sealed, so it's just sitting on there. Again, put your wet towel on it or whatever. And then I'm going to put this in the oven with the oven light on. And that is going to boost up the temperature in there by like a few degrees, probably 40. It's probably to come out to like 74, 75 in there. And that's where I'll probably leave mine for the majority of the day. So mid 70s is always a good place to shoot for letting your bread rise.
Other questions? There's folks, we haven't really seen anyone since they did the stretch and folds. You feeling good about your dough, status of your dough?
Is this what you call the proving phase, or is that a different?
So this is what's called the bulk fermentation phase.
Fermentation. Okay. Yeah. So what's proving's just?
So I'll tell you my theory on this. I don't know for certain, but bulk fermentation, you're not going to get a lot of rise right now. It's going to by like 2 o'clock this afternoon, it's going to have risen 20, 30% or something like that. I don't know. There'll be some air bubbles and stuff. But at this point, what's going to happen is the yeast is going to get in there. It's going to be eating all the flour. It's going to be fermenting the same way that beer ferments and stuff. And the yeast is going to impart a lot of flavor. So you'll notice with this, we put in flour, doesn't have a lot of flavor. Water has no flavor, and salt, which just tastes salty. Somehow at the end of all this, we're going to have a delicious loaf of bread. And that is going to be because of the yeast and its activity. So for bulk fermentation, it's going to be fermenting, eating stuff, producing the flavors, producing some of these gases, and causing the bread to get a good structure. So that's what they call bulk fermentation. At about 2, we're going to shape it, and then we're going to put it in a basket or a bowl to rise, and that's called proofing. So when it's rising in its final shape.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. Interesting.
Cool. Yeah. So actually, that's a good segue. So when we come back here at like 2 o'clock, I believe, is that what my email said?
I don't know.
I think my email said 2 o'clock. If it didn't, do whatever it says in the email. Jenny's gonna look it up. You'll need a bowl to prove your dough in. So I've got these proving baskets. They're pretty fancy pants. If you don't have one of those, Tupperware of any, about this shape, about this size, about this shape is what you're looking for. That's that. Let's see. I know that Dan and Sarah, you guys are using an oval Dutch oven. Is that right?
I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said, are you using an oval Dutch oven?
No, we have another Dutch oven.
Okay, cool.
But
so,
Kevin's using a oval one.
Okay. All right, cool. So
I am too.
Okay, you are too. Cool. I would say number one thing is make sure that your So check to see if your proving vessel here is going to fit into that oval. If it doesn't, you're not going to let it rise in a circle because it's not going, your bread's not going to fit. So first thing is going to be just to check to see if that fits. If it fits, no problem. If it doesn't fit, we'll want to prove it in something that's more oval shaped. I'm thinking I'll check after this to see if my loaf pan is about the right size, but a loaf pan might be a good move because it's, kind of oblong. If not, I have an idea for like, you can take something like this and maybe put like some towels in it, like on the sides to make an oval shape in the middle. So that's kind of some ideas I have. We can figure that out. The first thing is just to find out if your proving container is going to fit into that Dutch oven. And that'll give you a sense as whether we need to worry about it or not. So same thing for Kevin down there.
We have one that should fit.
You have one that should fit. Cool. Nice. All right. Anybody got any other questions?
Do you prove at the same temperature as you bulk ferment?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, no, sorry. What we're going to do today is we're actually going to prove it in the fridge overnight. So no, I'm going to put it in the fridge. It's going to be cold in there. But you can. So if you wanted to do this all on a one-day bake, then you could prove it at room temperature for a couple hours and then bake it. But we're going to bake tomorrow, so we're going to put it in the fridge. And that's going to give it a chance to, again, develop more flavors and develop a good structure.
When would you proof at a higher temperature?
When you want to go faster. So yeah, if you're noticing no activity, or if you want to bake in 2 hours instead of 4 hours or whatever, that's why. So the temperature is really just going to.
How is it going to rise if we're going to put it in the basket at 2:30 and then put it in the fridge and it's only going to be out 15 minutes before baking?
It will continue to rise in the fridge. It's just going to be slow. Totally. Yeah, as Jenny will tell you, I made sourdough pizza dough once, and I made these nice little balls that were this big, right? So it's like a little ball of pizza dough, and I put it in the fridge, and I put it into these big yogurt containers. So I made 2 of these, and I put it in there, and I was like, cool, it's not going to rise that much. It'll be fine. I'm going to bake these in a couple days, and I kind of, it didn't work into my schedule, so I ended up baking like 7 days later, 10 days later, and they rose so much in the fridge that they exploded out of the yogurt container, poured down the side, and made a big mess. So it can and will rise in the fridge. It just goes a lot slower.
So at 11:30, 12, 12:30, and 1 o'clock, you will take it, stretch and fold, a rotation, 1 rotation, so 4 stretches and folds. And we will be back here at 2:30.
2:30 is what it says?
Yep.
All right. So I'll see you all back here at 2:30. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll be on the Zoom, and we'll shape these things, and it's going to be awesome. All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. See you later.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.